the immediate proximity of the people living around here, it feels quite good. The next door neighbour's house looks nice and neat. There's no dogs or doof or anything like that going on. Just looking at the place from the outside, it's obviously, you know, quite basic, but very similar to that other place. I'm just trying to remember if there's anything strikingly different. I remember there was some trimmings and stuff in that other place that we checked out that aren't present in this place. There's a bit of a hairline crack up there. I don't know what's going on there. Probably just a bit of movement in the foundation. There's nothing that shows any catastrophic movement below that crack. I'd expect a bit of movement in these sort of places. They're obviously been built to a budget. And just looking out to the front, no automatic gates or flash fence like the last one. It's pretty basic. So you'd have to be doing something there. As I say, it's remarkably similar to the previous place that we've looked at. There's a bit of a cracked tile just there. I don't know what's going on there, but there's no evidence of water coming in or anything like that. So the roof looks reasonably okay. There's actually another hairline crack over on that wall over there and a little bit over there. Again, there's a certain amount of that I would expect. It doesn't look like it's anything too crazy, but there's a bit of a hairline crack there too. Probably just settlement, and you know, it should sort of settle down, but just something to keep in mind. But there's no evidence that those cracks are disturbing the roof line or causing any sort of water to get in or anything like that. So typical little place. That's what they call a kitchen, little kitchenette there with a sink. More like a unit really, rather than a house in terms of its size and layout. Two better. I don't know if the bulb's missing, so excuse the lack of illumination, but it is what it is. Little bedroom. I'm just trying to remember back to that other house that we looked at. I wonder if that room was a little bit bigger. I don't know. It might be just my faulty imagination, but you know, very, very basic. Old aircon. You'd have to check out if that works. It's got a couple of inlets for, that one doesn't look like it's commissioned, so you'd need to get the electricity checked out. Bit of a hairline crack along there again, so more evidence of some level of movement in the house. That hairline crack comes through, so there is some movement there. And just looking, there's no bubbling but of the walls, so there's nothing too drastic with rising damp or anything like that I can see, but something you'd need to think about. What's this? That tells me that there's some sort of liquid coming in, I would say, somewhere along the line. There's something that needs to be investigated. But because it's such a basic house, like a lot of them are, it's pretty much just a case of finding the tile that's out of place or replacing a tile. There's nothing too complicated that can be too difficult to rectify. And what's really common here is when it rains, water comes into houses. We were sitting down just yesterday and there was a really heavy downfall in our place, and all of a sudden we could feel a bit of pitter-patter. So it's not uncommon for these type of tiled houses, when it rains heavily, a bit of water will usually get in, or very often get in. So it's not as shocking as what it might be in, say, the place that you might be sitting in at the moment. It's relatively normal, but the good news is there's nothing too difficult to fix because these houses are so basic. Same sort of bathroom, very basic. Doesn't have as much in the way of mould as that other place that we looked at the Widowmaker. Toilet and everything's, you know, relatively okay. It is what it is. Very basic Paraguayan style bathroom. You just put in a ventilator up there and it should be good to go. And then just coming out to the yard, it feels like it's similar dimensions. I'm told they're pretty much the same, both in the size of the house and the actual property, but you need to verify that. But I think that it's very, very similar. You've got a neighbour at the back. You always got to be sort of mindful of that. You know, just make sure that they're not doof. Nice big dog there. Now, the thing I like about that is that in order to get over your back fence, someone has to get over their yard. So as long as they're decent, which I have no reason to expect they're not, then at least you've got some sort of buffer. And I'm told that the people who are next door here, I won't go into too much detail, but suffice to say, I think that it's a place where you would probably have some good neighbours, the sort of neighbours that probably would hopefully discourage people to break into, if you get my drift. Interesting little house. Just looking back at it, I can see a bit of a tile sticking up there. Don't know what that's doing. You want to get up on the roof and check it out. It's nothing that can't easily be fixed. Just put back into place. It's literally just tiles sitting on each other. On the outside, there's nothing too drastic at all. That hairline crack up there that I talked about before, all the footings and that look relatively intact. Bit of broken plumbing pipe at the end there. But if you look along there, there's no rising damp. All that mortar looks nice and dry. There's no spouting whatsoever. So the neighbours get a nice wash car every time it rains, thanks to the water that's coming off your roof. But I think it might be a nice thing to maybe put some guttering on there and run it down, if you like. And that's something that I do like about this, and that is that it's got a gently sloping backyard, so you can run water out and say down to a swale down there or down to some plants or whatever, but the water's going to sort of gently run away from the house, which is always a good thing. And you've got a vacant block of land here. As I say, the person who owns that is a pretty respectable person, I understand. Always, I'm thinking, well, potentially, if you wanted to, maybe that could be acquired, who knows? At least there's a chance. So for the price of a little house like this, I think it would present a really interesting option for someone that just wanted a cheap and cheery house that they could take on and secure and be within a few minutes of the township of Qroo Pauls. And I'm here on the weekend and I can only hear a distant sound of music, which is so odd for Paraguay. It's really a good indicator, I think, that I've been here a number of times, and on a previous video I talked about that little house down there, and I felt like it would probably be a quieter sort of area, a more family-oriented area, and this, to me, really goes further to perhaps indicate that. So you never know, but if they were going to be partying, this would be the day that they'd be doing it, I'd expect. So someone out there might be interested in a little house like that. As I say, it's just another one to add to your database of knowledge, just to show that that little place that I showed a few weeks ago isn't a aberration, that there are actually places that you can get for that sort of price point. They're not all that common. A house of this price that you could move into and live relatively comfortable, even with an old air conditioner, they're hard to find. If you find a house for sale in that price point, they're usually nothing more than sheds that you probably wouldn't be able to live in. So you've got a properly plumbed house here that has a kitchen of sorts, 2 bedrooms, air conditioning, and habitable. And to what degree you consider it habitable is, I guess, dependent on your standards. I would have no dramas living here. Those dogs, they do what they do, they're dogs. And I would probably add to that chorus by having one myself. Because it's a good yard, you'd probably build a more decent fence. There's a few options with fences. You can have a solid one, but the issue with a solid one, that little house down there that had the solid fence, that was fortunate because it was also a bit elevated, so the breeze was hitting the house at the back. But if you do put up a solid fence that's quite high, there's a few issues with it. One is that it holds in the heat and doesn't really let the breeze through, which can be a bit of a sort of downer because you're sitting in this really hot box of a property. But also the other thing is, if you've got a really high solid fence, once someone potentially jumps it, well, they've got complete security and privacy. I guess the only variable can be if you've got cameras or a dog yourself. Well, they're in a backyard that's got a solid fence, and now they've got even bigger problems. But these are all the security issues that you need to consider, and just weigh them up yourself. There's dogs everywhere here. So it's whenever someone walks past or whatever's going on. So there you have it, a basic, humble little 2-bedroomer. A few kilometres from town, 120 millioni. Gee, I guess to the right person, that is very attractive, and it gets you out of the rental market. And another thing to consider with a property of that value, well, you could literally pull that sort of money out of an ATM in a short space of time and just pay cash, which really gets you over the line in terms of all the issues relating to transferring money internationally or however else you want to do it. If you can buy a humble little place like this for a really good price, well, it's really convenient in more ways than one. And the other great thing is, once you've got your own property like this, you can fully fortify it. There's no bars on the windows here, so that's what I'd be doing. I'll be throwing bars up, putting some sensors in. If I was around regularly, I'd have a decent dog, and I think you'd be good to go. Maybe some cameras, but you could really make the place really secured. But as I say, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of this area being any more suspect or prone to break-ins in any other part of the country. When you look at places like this, you can look at them and think, geez, that, who knows, that could be. But this is Paraguay. This place really is a working class suburb with, I think, predominantly families. A dirt road leading up to it. There's no problem getting here in a car. I know people that live here who have got a bike and they manage to get to their house no problem. In the winter, I think it would be, a little bit slippery or whatever, but the sand here tends to not be so much slippery. It tends to soak the water in quite a bit more. All in all, an interesting little place just to consider, just to put it in your database of knowledge of places that you've seen and for what price. And just looking at the front gate there, that's the view from the front door. You don't have any neighbours across the road, which is nice. And that place over there where the dogs are barking, well, that looks like quite a palatial palace. So there's obviously money here, respectable people, and people that are looking after their place and look like they're decent sort of people. 120 millioni, you be the judge. The other good thing that I didn't mention is it's got the access to the rear of the property, big enough to drive a vehicle down, so you could have a carport and do whatever you like. So that's another great feature of these little houses. And I think they've kind of been inspired by the more Western style of building, because a lot of the more traditional Paraguayan houses are built in a more interesting way, a bit more unorthodox to what we might be used to. But when I walk in there, I just think of a unit that I might have lived in when I was younger. So it's more the vibe, has more the vibe of a standard humble little house that you would find in a suburb of, I don't know, whatever capital city or main city you might be living in a Western country. But I think it's, kind of nice, close to town. And apart from the dogs, Nice and peaceful. Those dogs tend to pipe down once there's no activity, and then they'll pipe up again. But, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, take care. Ciao.